Hi everybody, I'm Mark White of White, Summers, Cathy and Jane. We're a transactional law firm. I'm with my colleague and partner, good friend, Dennis Fernandez. Dennis runs our intellectual property practice. I run our corporate practice here in the Silicon Valley office. And we're starting a video blog series to talk to all of you about what we think will make your company outstanding in a number of ways, with how to position your company, how to excel, and use law to your advantage to do that. This is going to be an interview program. Dennis and myself, Mark and Dennis show, and we'd like to dive right in. So Dennis, good to be talking to you, and what I'd like to talk to you about today, actually, is one of the things you do very well, which is advising companies on what to invent. Now, companies build product, and everyone has an idea of what they want to do. But in your view, companies have to be very concerned about how to build what they want to build and making sure they're building the right thing. Not from a competitive standpoint, but really from the perspective of what is protectable, not only now when you first launch your product, but later on. Maybe you could speak a bit about that.
Yes, Mark. Initially, you go through careful diligence to make sure you're not trampling on other people's patents. You may identify the core enabling technology that is central to this new product technology. So if there's something that improves on the science, that's very strategic. Usually we'll file first on the early product or prototype system and the method of use. But we get more strategic later. We look at beyond just the engineering design, but we look at market activity on emerging standards. I would encourage people to try to invent not just their product and improvements, but what competitors might do to their products and improvements as standards.
So really the analysis goes beyond intellectual property. It's looking at competitive dynamics. It's looking at trend lines within an industry. And it's looking at convergent points on what technology bottlenecks are going to be addressed by all competitors with a certain solution for a given need. Is that right?
That's right. So it's interesting to look at the convergence of unrelated industries, medical and computers, or automotive and wireless communications. So the convergence of these unrelated industries will force inventions that are uniquely patentable.
So does that mean that companies, when they have a solution or a product in mind, they have to be aware of what those convergent points are to make sure that they can get through that? Or is it more architecture to make sure that you control that, or is it both of those?
It's all of the above. For example, in the wearable electronic space, or some people talk about Internet of Things, you see this kind of convergence of fashion with electronics or sensors and conventional appliances. A lot of strategic questions come up. Architecturally, what's the emerging platform? What are the communications protocol? What are the low-cost devices? Each one of these could enable strategic patents.
And the hard part about this type of thinking and analysis is that you can't go back, look at prior art. It's really prospective on what you think is going to happen, not necessarily in the next 6 months or a year, but it may be 5 years from now.
That's right. So you look well beyond the existing market. I pretend that the existing market is merely the beginning, and we look at other ways how it might evolve, even 10, 20 years later. So.
And one final question. It would seem to me that this is a constant analysis, a constant review. So even if you have a product, generation 1 or 2, you constantly have to be aware of the dynamics of new development within your field. And you've got to know what everybody else is developing as well. So the conversion points actually may change over time, and you've got to be aware of that. And so you're constantly, you're not pivoting not only in the business necessarily, but also in the product architecture and what it is you're trying to build. That standard is moving over time.
That's right. It's almost a daily tracking of product announcements and research data, like in biosensors, all kinds of new devices coming out. In the wearable space, almost every week there's a new variation on things you would wear on your eyes, on your wrist, that are useful for policemen or athletes. Yeah, so it's something that you would track on a regular basis. Yeah.
Okay, why don't we leave the discussion there? In our next segment, I want to dig a bit into how you find out this information and how you execute on this and what are the practical steps you've got to take to actually do this kind of review. Thank you all very much.